What I do, but choose me. What I do, but choose myself. Choose myself.
Lucas Coley's life began thousands of miles from the bright stage lights and screaming fans that would one day define him. Born in France to Senegalese parents, his early years were shaped by the vibrant rhythm of two cultures. In his home, he heard the lyrical flow of Wolof and French. In his neighborhood, he absorbed the pulse of French hip-hop. But beneath that colorful mix, there was a quiet longing, a desire to be seen, to stand out, to matter. In 2005, when Lucas was just 10 years old, his family made a life-altering decision. They packed their belongings, said goodbye to the familiar streets of their hometown, and boarded a plane to Michigan. The move was meant to offer better opportunities, but for Lucas, it felt like starting life from scratch. He arrived in the United States with a heavy accent, limited English, and an immediate awareness that he didn't fit in. The classrooms were foreign, the slang was confusing, and the culture shock was relentless. Kids made fun of how he spoke, the clothes he wore, the food he brought for lunch. And just like that, the outgoing child who once entertained his cousins at family gatherings learned to stay quiet. But silence has a way of creating pressure, and for Lucas, that pressure found release in music. He started by writing small verses in French, pieces that reflected his homesickness, his frustrations, his loneliness. Over time, English began to creep into his lines. At first, the grammar was imperfect, the rhymes clumsy, but the blend of languages created something unique. Without realizing it, Lucas was crafting a style that didn't exist in the Michigan rap scene. A bilingual flow that was raw, unpolished, and completely his own. By his late teens, he was recording tracks on borrowed equipment. A friend with a cracked version of a beat-making program would loop instrumentals for him, and Lucas would spend hours rapping into a cheap USB microphone. He'd upload the tracks to SoundCloud, sometimes getting only a handful of plays, but he didn't stop. Then, in 2016, everything changed. He recorded a track titled, "I Just Want to Go Viral." The title was ironic. Lucas wasn't paying for promotion, but something about the song resonated. The verses were sharp, switching between French and English in a way that made listeners stop and pay attention. The hook was catchy but honest, a mix of ambition and frustration. Within weeks, the song started gaining traction online. A popular influencer used it in a short video, then another, and then another. Before Lucas even realized what was happening, the track had racked up over 19 million views across platforms. It wasn't just a hit, it was a breakthrough. But unlike many overnight sensations, Lucas didn't come from a major label machine. He didn't have a polished PR team feeding him talking points. He was still just the kid from France who had been bullied for his accent, now telling his story through music. And people loved him for it. His fan base grew not just because of his sound, but because of his authenticity. He shared behind-the-scenes moments of writing songs in cramped apartments. He replied to comments personally. He wasn't afraid to talk about the hard parts, the rejection, the late nights, the doubts. And somewhere out there, one of those fans was watching closely. Amber Harrison was an influencer from Oklahoma, but her rise came from a completely different lane. She built her name in the beauty and lifestyle space, posting makeup tutorials, fashion hauls, and business tips. She knew how to curate her image, how to play the social media game. But despite her glossy online presence, she claimed she was tired of the superficiality that came with her world. One night, while scrolling, she stumbled upon Lucas's profile. Maybe it was the bilingual rap. Maybe it was his unfiltered captions. Whatever it was, something made her click message. Her DM wasn't a fangirl squeal. It was simple, deliberate. I like the real Lucas, not the rapper. For a man who had spent years questioning people's motives, wondering if they wanted him or the idea of him, those words cut through everything. This wasn't about his fame, his streams, or his growing status in the music scene. At least, that's what he thought. They began talking. At first, just quick messages back and forth. But soon, the conversation stretched longer. Texts turned into calls. Calls turned into late-night FaceTimes. Their first video call lasted about 6 hours. 6 hours of talking about family, childhood, music, dreams, insecurities. They laughed, they teased, they went deep. By the time they hung up, they both knew this wasn't going to be a casual online friendship. Lucas felt something he hadn't in years, that someone was seeing him, not just the persona he projected on stage. And Amber felt like she'd found someone who wasn't trying to impress her with the flash of influencer culture. From that moment, they weren't just two people in different states. They were a connection waiting to happen. A story waiting to be told. The move from online to real life would happen quickly, and once it did, the story of Lucas and Amber wouldn't just be theirs anymore. It would belong to the internet. 3 months after their first FaceTime, Amber Harrison booked a ticket to Michigan. She didn't come quietly. She documented the trip on Instagram stories, posting cryptic captions like, "Sometimes you just have to take a leap." Followers speculated, but no one guessed she was flying across the country to meet a rapper she'd only known online. When Amber stepped off the plane, Lucas was there waiting. No cameras, no entourage, just him, hands stuffed into the pockets of a hoodie, trying to mask the nervous energy in his eyes. The first days were a blur. Coffee shops, late-night drives, music sessions in his small home studio. Lucas played her unreleased tracks. Amber gave honest feedback, something he wasn't used to from people in his circle. She wasn't just impressed by the rapper. She seemed to care about the man behind the music. What started as a visit turned into something more permanent. Within weeks, Amber was splitting her time between Oklahoma and Michigan. They built routines, cooking together, binge-watching French films, arguing over playlists. And then came the idea that would launch them into a whole new public arena, a joint YouTube channel. It began casually. They filmed a video of Amber doing Lucas's makeup, playful, unpolished, and funny. The chemistry was undeniable. They posted it, expecting maybe a few thousand views. Instead, it pulled in hundreds of thousands. Viewers were hooked. The channel became a mix of intimacy and imperfection. One week they'd post a cozy vlog of a weekend trip. The next, a heated argument over something trivial. They didn't cut the tension out. They didn't hide the rough edges. And that's what made it addictive. The internet dubbed them relationship goals. Comments poured in from couples saying they wanted to be like Lucas and Amber. Singles wrote that their videos gave them hope that love could be both passionate and real. People began asking them for relationship advice, as if the couple's authenticity translated into expertise. With visibility came opportunity. Brands noticed the engagement, not just with their videos, but with their image. Sponsorship offers rolled in, clothing lines, luxury watch companies, travel agencies. One deal took them to Paris, billed as a romantic getaway, but also doubling as a marketing campaign. They posed under the Eiffel Tower, champagne glasses in hand, wearing designer clothes gifted by the sponsor. The photos spread across Instagram like wildfire. That Paris trip also birthed one of their most famous images, Lucas kneeling on one knee in front of Amber. Was it a proposal? They never said. The ambiguity worked in their favor. Engagement speculation became free advertising, fueling views and brand value. Every aspect of their life together was marketable. Their morning routines could sell coffee brands. Their trips could promote airlines. Their matching outfits could move products for clothing sponsors. The line between personal and professional blurred until there was no distinction at all. In those early years, cracks in the relationship were almost invisible to outsiders. The fights captured on camera seemed playful, the disagreements easily resolved. If there were deeper issues, they didn't make it into the uploads, or they were edited to look harmless. To the public, Lucas and Amber were proof that love could be both aspirational and authentic. They had passion without chaos, intimacy without secrecy, luxury without pretension. Or so it seemed. In reality, the constant filming, the need to perform even in private moments, was beginning to shape their relationship. Every romantic gesture was weighed for its content value. Every trip was half vacation, half photo shoot. Still, for Lucas, these were golden years. The woman who had once told him she liked the real Lucas was now by his side in every way. His music was thriving, his social media influence growing, and together they had built something neither could have achieved alone. By 2017, Lucas and Amber looked unstoppable. They were the internet's favorite couple, relatable enough to feel attainable, glamorous enough to feel aspirational. The audience saw a love story in real time, one that seemed to prove that even in the age of filters and clickbait, something real could still exist. But as history and countless tragic love stories have shown, the brighter the spotlight, the deeper the shadows it can cast. And behind the scenes, those shadows were starting to take shape. By 2018, the Lucas and Amber brand was a full-fledged machine. Their YouTube channel was pulling millions of views a month. Their social media followings had skyrocketed, and sponsorships kept their calendar packed with trips, appearances, and photo shoots. From the outside, they looked untouchable. But inside their apartment, away from brand deals and carefully lit videos, the foundation was starting to crack. It began with subtle changes in Lucas. Friends noticed he was becoming more anxious when Amber wasn't around. At first, he framed it as normal concern, but it soon crossed into something more. He started using Find My Friends to track her location. He'd text her if she was somewhere unfamiliar, asking who she was with, why she hadn't mentioned it, and when she'd be home. Amber brushed it off in the beginning, calling it sweet in interviews, joking that he was just a protective boyfriend. But in private, it wasn't playful. Lucas was checking her location multiple times a day. Then came the fake accounts. Lucas created anonymous profiles to monitor her interactions with other men. He would scroll through her likes and comments, noting any male names that appeared more than once. If Amber replied to a comment with even a friendly emoji, Lucas would confront her about it. The control turned public in the most humiliating way in 2019. Amber was hosting a live stream, lighthearted, filled with beauty tips and casual chatter. Midway through, Lucas interrupted off camera, accusing her of ignoring him. His voice was sharp, his tone accusing. Amber tried to laugh it off, but viewers caught the tension instantly. Clips of the exchange spread across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The comment section split into two camps, those who thought it was just harmless bickering, and those who saw something more troubling. Amber's response wasn't immediate, but it was decisive. She changed her phone passcode. She began going out without telling Lucas where she was going. She surrounded herself with friends outside their shared circle, people who didn't see her as half of Lucas and Amber, but as her own person. In 2020, she started therapy. In her own words, she was learning about boundaries and codependency, terms that, in hindsight, foreshadowed the changes to come. That same year, Amber made a suggestion that would forever alter their relationship, an open arrangement. She presented it as a way to explore honesty and freedom without ending what they had. Lucas agreed, but he didn't agree because he wanted it. He agreed because he feared saying no would push her away completely. He told himself he could handle it, that he was secure enough to share her attention. It quickly became clear that the arrangement benefited Amber far more than Lucas. She thrived, posting photos with new friends, some of them clearly more than friends. She glowed with the confidence of someone living on her own terms. Lucas, on the other hand, deteriorated. He smiled for the camera, played the role of the supportive partner, but inside he was unraveling. His music reflected it. Songs that once celebrated ambition and authenticity now carried themes of sharing love, losing love, and the quiet agony of watching someone slip away while still standing beside them. By 2021, the tension was no longer confined to their private life. Fans began noticing a shift in their online content. The videos felt different, less playful, more guarded. The warmth in their banter seemed rehearsed, the closeness staged. Publicly, they maintained the brand. They still posted matching outfit photos, still accepted luxury trips, still shared couple vlogs. Privately, the trust was eroding. Arguments flared over texts she didn't answer quickly enough, or photos she posted without telling him. He accused her of being emotionally absent. She accused him of suffocating her. The open relationship had opened something far more dangerous, a rift between their realities. For Amber, it was a path to independence. For Lucas, it was the slow dismantling of the life he thought they were building together. From 2018 to 2022, the cracks widened. They were no longer the unshakable couple they once portrayed. And while their audience saw hints of trouble, the viral fight, the distant smiles, they had no idea just how deep the fractures ran. This wasn't just the decline of a romance. It was the beginning of a psychological unraveling that would push Lucas toward obsession, and eventually to the point of no return. By early 2023, the Lucas and Amber story was no longer a fairy tale. The brand they had built together was still intact on the surface. Sponsorships, coordinated posts, public appearances. But privately, they were living in separate emotional worlds. Amber's focus had shifted. Her therapy sessions had opened her eyes to patterns she didn't want to keep repeating: dependence, lack of boundaries, living her life to keep someone else happy. She was talking about freedom, about reclaiming her individuality. Lucas, on the other hand, was holding on with both hands. The thought of losing her wasn't just painful, it was destabilizing. She had been with him during some of his most formative years, his rise to fame, his creative highs and lows. Without her, he feared not only personal loneliness, but also a kind of identity crisis. The conversation that would change everything happened in September 2024. Amber sat Lucas down. The words were calm, deliberate, the kind you use when you've rehearsed them in your head 100 times. She said she needed a break, time apart, time to figure out who she was without him. Lucas's response was immediate. He begged her to reconsider. He promised change, less jealousy, more trust, more space. He swore he could adapt if it meant keeping her. Amber listened, but her resolve was unshaken. Her voice was steady when she said, "You love an idea of me, not who I am." For Lucas, those words were more than a rejection. They were a declaration that the relationship he thought they had was a fantasy, and that she was walking away from it for good. On September 28, 2024, Amber made the separation official. She chose herself over the relationship. To her, it was a necessary act of self-preservation. To Lucas, it was the moment his world collapsed. That date would become the final line in his handwritten relationship timeline. 2 days later, something in Lucas changed. The frantic energy that had defined him for weeks, the desperate messages, the late-night calls, disappeared. Friends described him as eerily calm. It was the kind of peace that can be mistaken for healing, but often signals something else entirely. That day, Lucas made a series of quiet, deliberate moves. He called his younger brother and gifted him his Rolex, a prized watch he'd once said he'd wear on stage at his first sold-to-out arena show. He reached out to music producers and offered them expensive studio gear with no explanation. He stopped posting online altogether, cutting himself off from the fan base that had once been his daily lifeline. To those around him, it might have looked like he was decluttering his life. But in hindsight, it was clear he was preparing to leave it behind. The next day, Lucas made what would be his final round of personal calls. He told his mother he was proud of her strength. He thanked his father for teaching him perseverance. He told his brother to remember the good times. Then, silence. For 3 hours, his phone went completely dark. No calls, no texts, no app usage. GPS data would later show he drove 47 miles during that gap, but to this day, no one knows where he went or who he may have met. When he returned, he began writing letters. They were never sent. One to his parents, expressing love and gratitude. One to his brother, filled with shared memories. One to his manager, with instructions about his music. And one to Amber, "You gave me the best years. I wish I knew how to be happy without you." At 6 a.m., Lucas began organizing his bedroom. His awards were polished and aligned in perfect symmetry. Photos were arranged neatly on the dresser. His phone charger was coiled beside the bed. This was not casual tidying, this was preparation. The day passed without incident until late that night. At 11:47 p.m., Lucas broke his social media silence. He posted just 4 words, "I love y'all." His followers immediately sensed something was wrong. Comments poured in within minutes. "Are you okay? Please tell me this isn't goodbye." At 2:30 a.m., Lucas called his manager. His voice was steady, almost businesslike. "My family will need help with arrangements." At 2:43 a.m., he called Amber. This was their last conversation. Exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. According to Amber, Lucas told her, "I wanted to hear your voice one last time." She begged him to hold on to see the morning. He refused. At 2:47 a.m., the call picked up the sound of a gunshot. Amber screamed into the phone. The line stayed connected. Police arrived at 3:15 a.m. Lucas's phone was still active, Amber's screams echoing through the line. On his laptop screen was an old YouTube video titled "Why We'll Never Break Up." On the desk was a handwritten relationship timeline. The final entry read, "Sept 28, she chooses herself over us." The news hit social media like a detonation. Fans woke up to headlines announcing his death. Tributes poured in, along with blame. Some fans sent her death threats. Others defended her, insisting no one could be held solely responsible for another person's choice to end their life. But the narrative had already split in two, one side mourning Lucas, the other demanding Amber answer for his death. For Lucas's family, grief was complicated by the public storm. For Amber, life would never again be private. This was not just the end of a relationship, it was the violent collapse of a years-long bond that had been lived under the world's gaze. And the story didn't end here, because the aftermath would reveal secrets, unanswered questions, and evidence that left more doubts than closure. The morning after Lucas Coley's death, the internet was in chaos. News outlets scrambled to confirm details, but fans weren't waiting for official statements. Fans turned to Amber. His followers filled comment sections with accusations, grief, and rage. Screenshots of their old videos circulated with captions like "She broke him," and "This is what happens when you play with someone's heart." Others pushed back, insisting that no single person could be held responsible for another's decision to take their life. But in the court of public opinion, the case was already on trial, and Amber Harrison was at the center. Days later, Amber went live on Instagram for 47 minutes. She appeared calm, her makeup minimal, her tone measured. But her eyes, swollen and rimmed red, told another story. She confirmed what some had already suspected. Lucas had been researching suicide for weeks. He had left money for his family, along with handwritten goodbye letters. None were addressed to her. Amber described the breakup as necessary. Even in hindsight, I was too broken to save him. And he was too broken to save himself. She didn't deny their problems. She didn't sugarcoat the fact that Lucas had struggled with jealousy and control, but she also made it clear that she believed her choice to leave was the only way to save herself. When police examined Lucas's phone and social media accounts, they discovered something strange: several deleted Instagram drafts. According to investigators, these posts contained what they called damaging details about unnamed individuals and situations. To this day, those drafts have never been made public. Were they directed at Amber? At people in the music industry? At friends who betrayed him? No one knows. But their existence left an open wound in the narrative, a hint that Lucas may have been preparing to tell a story no one else wanted out there. Phone records revealed another layer of mystery. In the early hours of October 3rd, just before Lucas called Amber for the final time, she had made 2 calls of her own. Both were to an unlisted number. Both went unanswered by investigators' questions. By the time police tried to trace the number, it had been disconnected. Who was on the other end? Why had she called them at that exact moment? Was it connected to what happened later that night? The questions remain unanswered. Lucas's final Google search was chilling in its simplicity. Will she be happier without me? It was a window into his mindset in those last moments. Not anger, not revenge, but a desperate final attempt to answer a question that had haunted him since Amber walked away. Surveillance footage from a nearby property added yet another layer of intrigue. Between 1:15 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., the exact window in which Lucas took his life, a black sedan sat parked outside his home. No one got out, no one knocked, and no one has ever claimed ownership of the vehicle. Police did not pursue it further, citing lack of actionable evidence. But for fans and online investigators, the mystery of the black sedan became one of the most debated elements of the case. In January 2025, Amber made her own disturbing discovery. While sorting through some of Lucas's old clothes, she found a heavy winter jacket she didn't remember him wearing often. In the inside pocket was a small black external hard drive. When she connected it to her laptop, she found hours of video footage. Some were compilations of her telling Lucas she loved him, moments pulled from their YouTube videos, live streams, and private phone recordings. Others were secret audio files of their fights, moments she hadn't known he was recording, where her voice was sharp, mocking, or dismissive. There were also 17 suicide note drafts. The early ones were raw and angry, full of blame. The later ones were quieter, almost protective, focusing on his family's future rather than his pain. And then there was one last disturbing find. A folder containing research on life insurance policies. Lucas had looked into ensuring that even in death his family would receive financial support. The pieces don't fit neatly. The deleted drafts, the mysterious calls, the black sedan, the unsent letters. Were the deleted posts a sign that Lucas wanted to reveal something bigger? Who was Amber trying to reach at 2 a.m.? Why did the sedan sit outside his home during his final hours? Some believe these threads point to a wider story, one involving other people, hidden tensions, and events the public has never been told. Others think they're tragic coincidences in an already devastating narrative. Lucas's death left behind more than just music and memories. It left a cautionary tale about love under the spotlight, about the pressures of turning relationships into public brands, and about the dangers of assuming we know the truth just because we've seen the pictures. Amber's life was forever changed. She became a symbol of blame for some and of survival for others. Lucas's family withdrew from the public eye, focusing on preserving his music and his memory. And the fans? They're still here, listening to his tracks, rewatching old videos, and debating the details that still don't add up. We may never know the full truth. The final days of Lucas Coley's life are a patchwork of facts, unanswered questions, and haunting possibilities. What we do know is this: a love story that began as an internet fairy tale ended in tragedy, and the digital trail it left behind is as revealing as it is incomplete. If you want to keep uncovering the stories the headlines leave unfinished, the relationships that collapse under the weight of fame, the clues that don't fit the official story, the truths hidden in plain sight, subscribe to True Crime Red Flag. Because here, we don't just tell the story, we pull it apart until every last thread is exposed.